Greetings and salutations. It is I, Mr. Nothing, the museum curator of the weird and the strange, and the host who might be a ghost. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels throughout Slade Alley. So today it's just a regular Saturday. So I wanted to talk about a book that I just read. A book that I sort of just picked out at random on a website that I managed to find with some strange books. It's about haunted houses. Well, a different kind of haunted house, as you'll see in the title. And it's about soul-stealing time monsters, as best as I can guess. So I am talking about Slade House by David Mitchell. The interesting thing about Slade House is that, much like with a bunch of other books that I read in high school, it appears that I've accidentally read a sequel before I read the original, which happens from time to time. This one isn't more of a sequel, though. It's a companion piece. Slade House is nestled in the Bone Clocks series of books. Or this mythology that David Mitchell has created around Atemporals and a vigilante group that seeks to stop these Atemporals from stealing souls and killing people. Luckily for me, this is more of a companion piece. So it exists in that world, and you don't have to know much about the Bone Clock series in order to go, in order to read it and have a good time, because I didn't know much about it, but it does touch upon the mythology a little bit, in a way that's like there's a lot of exposition. David Mitchell doesn't just leave the reader guessing what all this is about. He provides some explanation. And if you're familiar with the Boneworks series, which I wasn't, I had to look online a little bit. A lot of that is relevant to there. Otherwise, you won't feel too out of place if you read this book. So I figure I'd share this story with you. It had a very similar feel to the Kindle short story by Stephen King, and that short story is about a man who accidentally procures a Kindle that allows him to read news from parallel universes, and eventually he runs into contact with a dimensional being that is you shouldn't have this technology, and warns him not to use it ever again. And that dimensional being shows up in a lot of Stephen King's other works, but you don't need to read those works to like and enjoy that short story. I don't like it when authors do that, because you have a wonderful story on your hands. You don't need to attach it to an existing mythology, but so many do, and it doesn't really sink the story, in my opinion, but it definitely leaves you wondering why they did that. I guess to appease the fans of the series or whatnot. I'll never really understand that. So without further ado, I thought I would talk about Slade House, a lovely haunted house type story. Do a little summary. I will try to avoid spoilers, just because it's a fairly new book, and I am definitely going to be strongly recommending it to you out there. But I will talk about it in the analysis section with some spoilers and whatnot. So if you just want to go to the spoilery analysis section, that's where it'll be. So yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into this book. Slade House is divided into 5 parts. It's with 5 different characters showing up to the titular house over the course of the years. For various reasons, starting in 1979. So in 1979, the story focuses on Nathan and his mother Rita, who are going to Slade House because they were contacted by some woman named Lady Grayson or something like that, who for Rita at least, like because she's a single mom, like Lady Grayson promised a better life in some way to move up her station. So Rita's interested in that. As Nathan and Rita spend more time there, Nathan comes to meet Jonah, who is a pretty interesting character. Nathan feels kind of like out of touch with everyone else. He feels socially awkward, but Jonah provides a sense of comfort, and they grow to be friends. However, the longer Nathan is outside with Jonah, things begin to get weird. Like a darkness suddenly grows, and it forces Nathan to go inside the house. And Nathan is making his way through the house, can't seem to find his mother, and finds a bunch of weird portraits, and one of the portraits is Nathan himself without his eyes, which is very unusual to him. And then he gets inside and he's confronted by, or even further inside to like the attic area, and he's confronted by Jonah and Nora, who is no longer with Rita at that point in time. So what happens there is that Jonah and Nora reveal themselves to be specters of sorts. Essentially, they're planning to steal Nathan's soul because it'll grant them immortality in some way. It's revealed throughout the story, and they have to do this every 9 years. Otherwise, their house will begin to fall apart. Their orison, as they call it, they steal Nathan's soul, and Nathan is forced to watch like them consume his soul, and he dies. Really tragic. The story then flashes forward 9 years in time to 1988. The story focuses on Gordon Edmonds, a police officer who's had bad luck in his previous relationships. He was contacted by a character named Fred Pink, who ran into contact with Nathan and his mom in the previous story before he was knocked unconscious and put into a coma by a minicab, and then wake up 9 years later in which he found out those two characters were missing. And so he's like, oh, I know where they were. They were looking for a specific house, Slade House. Gordon ends up investigating Slade House and finds it and discovers that a woman named Chloe Chetwynd is at the house now, which is kind of weird. Like, how does that work out? But Chloe is interesting because she doesn't seem to know who Nathan and Rita or even the great Lady Grayson is. So, he's like, well, I guess I'm out of luck then, because he was tasked with investigating it, and it's just another cold case. But interestingly, Chloe and Gordon end up sort of falling in love, and they develop a small romance over what appears to be a couple of days, and they end up having sex after having dinner together. And after he gets out of bed, he wanders the hall and he finds a portrait of Nathan, who Chloe said she didn't really know. And he also sees a portrait of himself, which is very unusual, but he tries to justify it by saying, oh, Chloe painted a picture of me because she likes me so much. Unfortunately, Nathan, the portrait of Nathan begins talking to him and is like, I found a weapon. It's too late for you to use it, but make sure to give it to the next person in line in order to prevent them from having their soul stolen. And then, it's all revealed to be a trap by Nora and Jonah, and they suck out Gordon's soul, much to his horror. Flash forward another 9 years into the future, and a group of paranormal investigators at a college are like, well, this is very suspicious. My uncle Fred Pink showing up again is like, he says that this house is haunted and we should go there. And they go to the house, and it's discovered that it's just a Halloween party going on there. It doesn't really seem haunted at all. So the group kind of splits up at that point, and the character we follow Sally, who is described as like weight conscious and kind of doesn't have a lot of self-confidence. She's hanging out with a boy named Todd, and they develop a bit of a chemistry together at the party and hang out more. But once again, Sally begins to discover that this house is not what it seems. And Todd and her try to escape the house. Unfortunately, it is revealed that Todd was just a sort of mimic of the original person, and that Todd's been killed, and it's actually been Jonah the whole time. And luckily, Sally managed to run into the after image of Gordon at the party, and he handed her a sort of like hairpin that could be used as a weapon. Unfortunately, she doesn't get to use it, and they suck out her soul, and she also dies. Flash forward another 9 years into the future. It's 2006, and Sally's sister Freya, who is a journalist, meets Fred Pink at a local bar in the town where Slade House is in, and this chapter is much just a lot of exposition about the background of Jonah and Nora, and what the big old deal is with Slade House. I won't bore you with the details, although it's not very boring. It's very interesting, and you learn a lot about the character histories and how this whole process works. Unfortunately, once again, it's discovered that Fred Pink died a couple days ago, and this has been all a ruse on the part of Nora and Jonah, who have plotted yet again to steal someone's soul at this point in time. However, before they can consume her soul, the after image of Sally shows up with the hairpin and stabs Jonah in the neck, wounding him pretty severely. And Freya's soul is able to pass through the other world into the afterlife. Very fortunate for her. Flash forward another 9 years into the future. We are in 2015 now. And so the story shifts focus to Nora, one of the monster people in the house. She has lured a psychiatrist to the house, who has a specific type of soul that they're looking to steal. Jonah is kind of in the attic of the house. He can't really do anything right now because there's a giant like hairpin stuck in his neck, and they haven't had a chance to heal because they haven't had a fresh soul in 18 years. What happens, and who does this psychiatrist actually turn out to be? Well, that is a big mystery and worth reading about. I will leave it up to you, and so that is where I will leave my summary at this time. So in terms of analysis, this story is really good. Many times I found I couldn't put down the book, and I wanted to learn more, and I found it to be very sad and funny and kind of confusing at times, and very horrifying also. And so I think Mitchell does a great job there. Particularly, he does a great job of unraveling the mystery, and like even in the specific stories, like having characters' entire realities unravel around them, and they're shocked and terrified. And Mitchell does that in a wonderful way that I feel like not enough horror writers do. In some cases, I feel like horror writers just make it so that the characters accept the demented reality in which they're thrusted into. And there's a lot of dread in this story, and there's a specific section I want to read that comes from Nathan's story, where everything is kind of turning to darkness around him as he's with Jonah. So here we go. The blankness is moving closer like a storm front. Then, at the far end of the brambly side path, Jonah appears, and I relax for a second because he'll know what to do. But as I watch, the running boy shape gets fuzzier and becomes a growing darkness with darker eyes that know me, and fangs that'll finish what they started, and it's pounding after me in a sickening slow motion, big as a cantering horse, and I'd scream if I could, but I can't. My chest full of molten panic. It's choking me, choking its wolves, its winter, its bones, its cartilage, skin, liver, lungs. It's hunger, and run. And the sense of dread is growing for Nathan in that passage, and it's the panic is growing too, because your reality is disintegrating all around you, and it only gets worse for Nathan as it goes on. And so I think David Mitchell does a perfect job in that, and through all of the stories really. There's a part with Freya's story where she suddenly realizes that she's not actually at the tavern. She's actually in a fake stage setup inside the house, and she's been there for a while, and everything disintegrates around her, and it's horrifying and deeply sad too, because you really wanted her to be the one to take down these vicious monster people, and unfortunately, that's not the case for her. A big theme that shows up throughout the story is the idea of giving the best way to ensnare these people is to give them what they want. For Nathan in the first story, he's ensnared by Jonah because Jonah gives him the comfort of friendship, something that he doesn't have at his school because he's bullied, and he doesn't have that comfort of companionship because his mom is too busy working and trying to make her way up into high society, and his father is divorced and happily with the new woman that he is with. Rita in particular, she's discarded, cast aside by these monsters, but she's ensnared because she's promised upward class mobility. Freya, who I was just talking about, she's promised answers about her sister who she loved dearly. Sally is given an opportunity to find maybe a relationship, something that she's not really had before. And in the second story, Gordon is given a chance to be a big manly man for a damsel in distress. So each of these characters are promised something. They're ensnared with something that they deeply want. And that is how the monster people, Nora and Jonah, are able to, just steal their lives and their soul in the end. And I feel like that's very demented on the part of David Mitchell, because what kind of monster would dangle that in front of a helpless victim and ultimately not give them that in the end. The only issue with this story, two main issues, is one that it feels repetitive at times. Each story has the same kind of beats, with a character discovering the house, character being manipulated or lied to by the ghost sort of things in the house, and then their soul being extracted and taken away from them, with them feeling a sense of horror. Mitchell does shake it up a little bit in each story, particularly with Freya's, in that you don't see her go into the house, which kind of hurts even more when you find out that she is in the house the whole time. But it still does feel a bit repetitive at times, and that's I guess that's one point against the book. And then at other times it feels like there's too much exposition, especially because Mitchell's trying to make this a part of a larger story, a part of a series as a whole, and so he's got to take us through everything he pretty much talked about in Bone Clocks, with this whole centuries-long war between two rival factions that seemingly live forever, and have to go through nefarious means to live forever. So there is a bit of an exposition, and Mitchell doesn't dabble it throughout the story. It's very it's deeply centered, especially at the end of each chapter, as Nora and Jonah reveal themselves a little more to their victims. If you're not a fan of exposition, that could get a bit annoying at times. I personally felt it was a bit juicy, and it was fun to read, but because of the repetition, it did get annoying. Now, overall, I would say I thoroughly enjoyed this story. It was really good and horrifying, in terms of reading it in October. It's a perfect book. I was kind of expecting a standard ghost story, but because I think he connected it to the overall mythology that he's trying to create, it gave me a different vibe, and I absolutely enjoyed that, and I especially liked the unraveling and everything I just talked about. It really sells the story and makes it even better. Because of that, I can't wait for more to read more of David Mitchell's work, and I absolutely recommend that you go out and find this book. It's worth reading, and I don't think you can go wrong with this one. If you have already read this book, or you want to say something about what I said in my review, feel free to comment below. I would love to hear from you and have a discussion about this. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that we can talk more about David Mitchell's work or more about ghost stories in general. Until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and immortal travels. Farewell.